Today I'm in New Hampshire and I'm going to a place called Castle in the Clouds. Just bought my ticket for 16 bucks. Here's the map. I have to wear the sticker when I'm going in here because I park and then the trolley takes you up and takes you to the castle. There's some interesting things along the way, a waterfall that you can stop and look at. I'm excited! This is gonna be fun! Alright, beach cricket out! Isn't it beautiful? Woo! Let's take a little winding road to go see Castle in the Clouds. Is this the enchanted forest? It sure looks like it. See? Babbling brook down there. Amazing! Woo! This is going to be fun. There's a little one right there, a little waterfall. Kitty! Can you see it? A little hard when I'm filming from the van. Okay. That was amazing. And now we're going up the road to the castle where we park so that we can get the little shuttle trolley bus that will pick us up and take us to the castle. Okay, and this is a long and winding road for sure. Wow, but it's beautiful, isn't it? It really does look like an enchanted forest. Alright, beach cricket out. Well, they had this little lookout point and I thought I'd stop and look out! Let's see here. Wow. Just a quarter. Very nice. Alright. Now this is beautiful. Very, very pretty. Okay, I don't know about you, but I'm really interested in this castle to see what it's all about. I've never been in the castle before. It's long overdue, except for Cinderella's castle, you know. You walk through. Whoopee! This is going to be interesting, I hope. Anyway, let's go find out. Another quick little view, and we're off. Well, they had this little lookout point, and I thought I'd stop and look out! Let's see here. Wow. Just Very nice. All right. Now this is beautiful. Very, very pretty. Okay, I don't know about you, but I'm really interested in this castle to see what it's all about. I've never been in the castle before. It's long overdue, except for Cinderella's castle, you know. You walk through. Whoopee! This is going to be interesting, I hope. Anyway, let's go find out. Another quick little view, and we're off. About the place. I like to say the land, the man, and the building. The man who built this place is Thomas Plant. He's the guy here on the mantle. Probably more than 100 years ago, turn of the last century, people started coming up to this part of New England and building big country estates. They called it the American Country House Movement. Well, Mr. Plant was no exception. He came up here from Massachusetts and he bought 6,300 acres of land. He owned everything from the Ossipees here all the way down to Lake Winnipesaukee and about 2 miles along the lakefront. So literally everything you see when you look from here down to the water belonged to one man. No one could do that today. He worked with an architect named J. Williams Beale out of Boston to design his home. He wanted it to look like a castle, but he also wanted it to reflect the arts and crafts movement that was popular 100 years ago. I like to say the house is kind of a fooler. It has a rustic look to it with the stone and all the timber you see and the red tile roof, but it was really a modern house 100 years ago. It's built more like a skyscraper than it is like a castle. Steel beams, poured concrete. The stone is only a facade. Walls are like this. And all the latest technology that was available at the time. Mr. Plant had a generator run by the spring on the property, so he always had electricity 7 years before the town of Moultonborough had power. He had a Bryan ammonia refrigeration system, an intercom, central vacuum system, all the bells and whistles. Mr. Plant's story is typical of the American dream. He went from rags to riches. He was born in Bath, Maine in 1859. His parents were French Canadian. They had come down from Quebec to the coast of Maine because his father was a fisherman, and they thought life would be better fishing in Maine. Unfortunately, I don't think that was the case. Life was still hard. When Tom Plant was 14 years old, he had to quit school and get a job to help support his family. He found a job working in a factory in his hometown of Bath, but that factory burned in 1880 when Tom Plant was 21. So he and his younger brother, William, went down to Massachusetts to find work. He ended up finding a job in a shoe factory in Lynn.
Started out at the bottom, worked his way up the ladder. By the time Tom Plant was 32, he owned the shoe factory. It was the Thomas G. Plant Shoe Company. So I guess that says he was pretty ambitious, was a hard worker, a smart man. He married a woman named Caroline Griggs, who was from Chicago. Her father was a well-to-do publisher in Chicago. Always a good idea to marry money, right? Clearly I didn't do that. I married the trolley driver, so I didn't get that memo. But her father, Samuel Griggs, really liked his new son-in-law, Tom Plant, and he gave him $1 million shortly after they got married to invest in his business. So he took that $1 million, he bought himself another factory building and started fixing it up. By the time Tom Plant was done with it, it was the largest maker of women's shoes in the world. It was about 6 blocks long, 6 stories high, and more than 5,000 people worked there making shoes. Huge operation. He made a lot of money in the shoe business, making and selling women's shoes. In 1910, he sold his whole operation to the United Shoe Machinery Corporation. United Shoe bought him out for $6 million in 1910. Tremendous amount of money, 100 years ago. So, as soon as he sold the business, his wife Caroline filed for divorce. They'd been married about 60, good timing on her part. They had been married 15, 16 years. They didn't have any kids. So at the age of 51, Tom Plant had no wife, no kids, no job, and a big pile of money. He could do anything he wanted to do. I think the problem might have been, if you want to call it a problem, that he had been working since he was 14. He didn't have any idea what to do to relax. He decided to go off to Europe and figure out what he was going to do with the rest of his life. It was while he was traveling in Europe that he got the idea to buy land up here. We think that's because his younger brother, William, already owned property on Lake Winnipesaukee, on Moultonborough Neck. What we know for sure is that he sent his brother a telegram from Europe and asked him to start buying land up here while he was traveling, which he did. In the meantime, Tom Plant was in France. He met a young woman by the name of Olive Dewey. Olive was from Illinois, and she was traveling in Europe with her parents when she met Tom Plant. The two of them hit it off, even though he was 24 years older than she was. But what's not to like? He's not a bad-looking man. He was charming and worldly and had a lot of money, so I'm sure she was quite taken with him. The two of them got married. They started planning their dream home up here. Mr. Plant claimed that he hired 1,000 workers to build this place. Construction began in the spring of 1913. They moved in here in the fall of 1914, just 18 months later. So I'm sure there were hundreds of people working up here. Well, things went along well for a little while, but by 1924, 10 years later, Tom Plant was basically broke and his estate was for sale. What happened? Well, we don't know for sure. We know he made a number of bad investments. In 1915, he invested heavily in Russian imperial bonds. Oh, those Russian bonds, not a good idea. He thought he was going to make a lot of money, but it didn't work out that way. 2.5 years later, those bonds were worthless. He had thrown away $750,000. He was never going to see that money again. Mr. Plant was kind of a risk taker. He wanted to get that money back, so he invested in Cuban sugar. And there was some kind of a crop failure, and he lost that investment as well. After that, he built the Bald Peak Colony, golf course, country club down by the lake. If any of you are golfers, he hired Donald Ross to design the golf course. He built 9 cottages around the golf course. His plan was his wealthy friends would come up here from Massachusetts, they would join the country club, they would buy these houses, and he'd be in the money. Didn't happen. People didn't want to come up here. It was too remote. It was too far from anything, which is probably still true. Well, by 1928, he was desperate for money. So he went to a friend by the name of Joseph Emery for advice. Mr. Emery offered to mortgage the property. He said, why don't I take over ownership of the estate myself, and you can essentially rent it from me. You just make payments to me. Mr. Plant agreed to do that. Well, fast forward 12 years. It's now 1940. Joseph Emery died. the bank assumed ownership of this property from the estate of Joseph Emery. First of all, they discovered that nobody had been making any payments on that mortgage for the last 12 years. Joseph Emery just let Tom and Olive live here for nothing. That's what a good friend does, I guess. But unfortunately, once the bank took over ownership, they weren't going to keep doing that. So the bank started pressuring Mr. Plant to pay up. By that point, he was 81 years old, had been retired for 30 years. There was no way he could do that. So the way I look at it, it's not all bad that he didn't live very much longer, lived maybe another 6 months with the bank breathing down his neck. He actually died of complications from an ulcer, which I don't find the least bit surprising. He was in the hospital in Laconia when he died. The day he passed away, his wife came home from the hospital that night, got up here and found that the bank had been here ahead of her. They came in and foreclosed on the property the day Tom Plant died. She was not allowed to come in until they inventoried everything. Once they had done that, she was allowed to come in and take out her personal things, but everything of value belonged to the bank. They held a foreclosure auction in the fall of 1941. A man by the name of Fred Tovey bought this estate at the bank auction for $160,000. And that included 5,500 acres of land. I have to think that was a pretty good investment on his part. Interestingly enough, he was a lumberman and didn't want the house. He was really more interested in getting his hands on the trees. He couldn't afford to heat the house. They kept it for 15 years. He sold it to Richard Roby from Boston. Mr. Roby opened it up to the public. And they sold it to a group of investors who built a water bottling plant. They started bottling that spring water. Of course, 1991 was about the time we all figured we couldn't drink water out of the faucet anymore, had to drink bottled water. So they cashed in on that. They started bottling it. Today it's owned by a Canadian company. They bottle Crystal Geyser water for Mr. Plant Spring. Who knew? After about 10 years of ownership, the bottling company people decided they didn't want to be in the business of running a tourist attraction. They really just wanted access to the spring. So they kept the bottling company and the land that the spring is on, but they sold about 5,200 acres of land to the Lakes Region Conservation Trust, who raised close to $6 million to purchase the land and the buildings. The buildings are owned by the Castle Preservation Society. Their goal is to restore the house and to make it look like it did 100 years ago. So when you go inside, it's like going back in time. Nobody's really lived here since Tom Plant died, so they never came in and remodeled the kitchen or updated the bathrooms. About 90% of the furniture in the house is original. The things that are not original are most of the furnishings, like the dishes in the cupboards, the rugs, the linens on the beds, the clothes in the closet, the books in the library. They're vintage. They're correct to the time period, but they didn't belong to Mr. Plant. So there's your story. Do you have any questions for me before you go in?
Oh, you were very
thorough. You never wanted to know.
They also provide horse riding here at the castle. So you can have some fun doing that as well. This is a great place. Everybody, I'm back safe in my van. I hope y'all enjoyed the tour along with me on Castle in the Clouds. It is in New Hampshire. It's fantastic. It's about a 19-minute drive from Plymouth, and I totally just got into it and had a wonderful time just looking around and seeing the wonderment of this time era that this man made this castle. And I mean, it had all those amenities. It's just fantastic. It was wonderful. I would love to have taken one of those showers, the needle showers. They have 6 of them in there. The technology way back then on that was just amazing, but I would love to do it now. They sadly do not have water power in the castle right now. The pipes are too old to take care of business, so they don't have that, available. But boy, they looked really like they did the job. Anyway, the place is wonderful. The trolley, the beauty of the falls. You can have horse riding here. You can go visit the lake pond where they have trout that are huge. You can't fish them for them, but you can feed them, and they provide free food down there at the well, I think it's free. That's what the tour guide told me. Anyway, don't know, I just looked. I didn't walk down to the pond, but they provide food down there to feed them. It's just a wonderful experience here to enjoy a day and to have a little fun. They also have a place where you can eat and get a drink, a mixed drink, that is, an adult beverage. And they also have a little snack area further down, which is near the stables where you can ride your horses. That is ice cream and all kinds of different snacks that you can purchase there. So it's got much to offer here, and it's simply beautiful. So anyway, that's all for now. Hope you enjoyed it. Beach Cricket out. Bye.